New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Hello and welcome to Growing Edge Live. I'm Allie Benjamin and it is my great joy to be here today. I have another wonderful guest lined up for today's show. And here at the Growing Edge Live, we offer a spiritual tune-in and tune-up every week. We have conversations with soul-centered individuals that are channeling their time, their love, their energy, their resources, their creativity into doing good works in the world. And my guest today is an amazing example of that. Reverend Dr. Michelle Medrano is my guest. She is the co-leader at the Mile High Church in Denver. And she is also my friend and my classmate in our Enneagram studies. Yay. And today we're doing something a little different here at the Growing Edge. We are having an Enneagram chat, and we're going to be doing this more regularly. And today is sort of the kickoff of that. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Allie. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, it's really good to be here with you and to be talking about something that we're both really passionate about.
Yeah.
And it's very fresh for us because we just graduated not too long ago in Denver, and from our masterclass certification program with none other than your mother as our teacher.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So why don't we jump in and talk about the Enneagram a little bit? I know that I've talked about the Enneagram on the show off and on, but not had a whole conversation about it. So let's talk about what the Enneagram is a little bit for those that might not know, and then talk about our personal journey, how we came about finding the Enneagram and how it's impacted us and our lives and our relationship.
Sounds
good?
fun.
Yeah, good. So the Enneagram is a psycho-spiritual system. It offers a sort of a visual image. Enneagram stands for Ennea, meaning 9, and gram meaning a symbol or a drawing. And so many of us have seen that symbol. It looks like a star within a circle, and there's 9 points that represent 9 different personality types. So there's 9 different ways we can not only understand ourselves, but others. And we're not just one of those points. We're sort of a combination of all of them. So what would you like to say about the Enneagram as a symbol and a structure, a language for personal growth, awakening, development?
Well, I think you've described it very well. And I know that for me, when I first encountered it, my first resistance that came up was, I don't want to be put in a box. I don't need or want another personality test to tell me who I am. I know who I am. And I was kind of hesitant and resistant to it. And what really began to sell me were some keywords that you just mentioned, that this isn't just about behavior and how you look. It's about motivation. And I'm all about what motivates me, because I know that in my life, the moments I'm most surprised at myself are the moments when there appears to be a dissonance between what I think I said I wanted to do and be and what I'm actually doing and being. And that dissonance is all about motivation. It's what am I really motivated by? What's really going on at the deeper level of me? And so I began to use the Enneagram and see this 9-point system as a way, and we learned in our training to talk about we lead with a certain number because, as you said so beautifully, we do have relationships to other numbers in the system, and that colors who we might be in our particular number. So it's not so much a box, but as our teacher would tell us that your personality is strangling your essence. Your personality that we've developed to get along in the world is strangling and is obfuscating the beauty that lives deep within us, which I love how the Enneagram articulates that too. So it's not just pointing to where we're behaving badly or we're struggling or our motivation is not in total alignment. It also points us back to the genius of our type and the genius of who we are as we explore ourselves. And I think that's what people are hungry for. We're hungry to know ourselves, and we're hungry to understand ourselves, and we're hungry to be able to take that knowledge and be and feel more successful in our lives. And there's nothing better than being aligned. That alignment, when my motivation and my behavior and my words and my actions are aligned, that's awesome. And so I think the Enneagram helps people to have that feeling and have that experience more often too. But the 9 paths, the 9 different paths are great to start with. And you're right, that very first step is to discover, where do I lead with in the 9 options? Which one am I most attuned to? And that starts the journey very powerfully.
Yeah, I love all of that. Just hearing you talk about it, I'm getting really motivated to be, sharing this with others and having these chats on a more regular basis, because as you're sharing it, I'm remembering how powerful it was for me when I learned what type I lead with. And I lead with type 4, the individualist, and you lead with
type 3, the performer or achiever. As they have different names depending on, but both of those names resonate for me for sure.
Yeah, and you're number 3 and I'm number 4, and we're right next to each other. So we probably have some areas where we blend a little bit and are similar in some ways.
Yes.
So,
yes. And through our training, I've really seen more of my 4 wing, as they call it, the numbers on either side. And I've seen more of that. So I definitely see places where I go, oh yeah, I feel the same exact way as Allie about that. And I'm sure that's where we're connecting.
Yeah, exactly. And likewise, I really see where I can gain a lot of the energy of the point 3, the achiever, the performer, very motivated, can be very goal oriented, can move things along really quickly and efficiently when I have to, when I'm not being moody and all the other things that happen. Let's talk a little bit about how it was for each of us when we discovered our type. Now, we've mentioned that your mother is our trainer, so maybe you could share a little bit about, her, because you grew up in her household and you saw her developing, and maybe you want to talk about that, and if you were on board with it right away, or if it took you time to appreciate the Enneagram as she was talking about it.
Sure. Well, when she first discovered it, because she, of course, found it, we were actually living on separate coasts. I was living in California and she was living in Maryland. And she began studying it. And then we both ended up in Phoenix together as she was continuing her studies. And she was talking a lot about it. And I had that initial resistance. But the more she talked about it and the more I learned about it, the more I was intrigued. And I had the experience that a lot of people have in the initial exploration of the numbers that she helped me do. I did not want to be a 3 at all. I was very resistant to being a 3. I was like more excited about all the other numbers, but the 3, I kept kind of pushing it aside. And that often is the case, as we both know. Where it really hooked me, though, I think, is that I invited her to do a workshop for couples on the Enneagram at my center in Arizona, my spiritual center. And I found that understanding the man I was married to and his type, oh my gosh, what a huge up-leveling that was to our relationship. Because in any relationship, it's so easy to, I guess, get offended or think that the other person is doing things just to irritate you, or that whole thing about taking things personally just can fall away, especially in our closest relationships. We don't practice the 4 agreements. Sometimes I don't anyway. But what I learned by understanding myself and my husband within the Enneagram, that sold me eventually on, this is really powerful stuff. And from then on, I became very willing to continue to learn from her. And she came and did trainings with my board of trustees at various times, which was very helpful to learn who we had running our center, what numbers were missing. Because if you have, say, some of the more head types or the skeptics missing from a group, you can all march forward with positivity and think you're going in the right direction and fall off a cliff. So it's really be important for us to find balance in that as an organization. And it just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper for me. And so that's really how I came to learn about it. It was as an adult. And then having a child, the minute my son was born, my husband and I both had a sense of him being an introvert, and then knowing the Enneagram like we knew it. He really was, for me, a manifestation of the genetic component of this, because we could tell right away that he seemed a little bit more like the more introverted type in the Enneagram system, the 5. And as he grew older and developed his personality, I that's definitely the type that he leads with. So it really showed me, the more I understood it and lived my life between both of those things, I began to have a deeper appreciation for it. So now I look forward to teaching it with other people. How about you? How did you come into it?
Well, I had heard about it. You and I are both ministers, and I had been in a minister's retreat, a couple of them, and people had mentioned it or asked me, what Enneagram type do you lead with? And I didn't know. So I immediately once I got home, went on and took tests online and received these reports back. And they're typically a graph, a pie, graph. And it shares percentages, like, you've got 43% of type 4 or 23% type 7. And it was just too much. I was too busy in my life, and I thought, this sounds interesting, but it's too mathy, and I'm very dyslexic, and I can lose patience with things like that. So sort of shuffled it away, but still wanted to be able to talk to people, in my friend group that were talking about the Enneagram. And so there was a little bit of keep my finger on the pulse of it, but I really didn't find it until I was really struggling emotionally, with some mental health challenges. And a friend of mine referred me to your mother. So I started working with your mother, doing personal coaching and counseling with her. And it's very much a part of her practice. Yeah. And so once, I think on our first little get to know each other chat, she asked me if I knew about the Enneagram, and I told her briefly, a little bit. And so I was just about to go on my pilgrimage. I went to walk in Portugal on the Camino. And I thought, okay, I'm going to use these 9 types and the descriptions to really ponder on my walk, on my pilgrimage, to discover what type I am or what type I lead with. And so I did that. I kept every morning, I'd read the through, and like you, I'd read mine and go, ooh, don't like that one. Number 4, the individualist, overly emotional, self-absorbed, moody. And I didn't, of course, I only read the negatives.
Yeah.
You know, I had read the positive aspects, but I only focused on the negatives, because the individualist is also the creative, the very much common is being an artist, and I am. And so there were very appealing traits to my type, but again, I sort of focused on the more negative ones. And it took me about 3 months, actually. I had a good idea that I was a 4, but I wasn't really ready to claim it, to say that that's it for sure, because I felt like there's so much information to study that I wanted to look at the wings, like you mentioned, the 2 numbers on either side. And so that was September. January, I finally claimed it. I came out of the 4 closet. And
hi, my name is Allie Benjamin, and I'm a 4.
Oh my God. Exactly. And it really did help me to understand myself. I had, like, on our path to becoming science of mind practitioners, we do a lot of depth work, a lot of studying who we are and why we do what we do. But I had never really heard it framed up the way the Enneagram frames it up. And this, for the type 4s, it's this deep sense of longing. There's something missing. And there's that deep searching for that missing thing. And so that really had me feeling in a place of discontent a lot. And all the studies I've done, all the classes I've taught, all the ways I've tried to heal this, kind of question mark thing, the Enneagram pointed it out. And then I was more able to say, okay, this is what that is. This discontent isn't really me. It's just something that I have a tendency to focus on. And once I realized it was sort of a lens or a filter that I saw the world through when I was in an unhealthy place, then I was more able to find a way out. And for me, the way out of that discontent or that envy, sometimes that word's used within the Enneagram model, I began to practice a lot of gratitude, because that's the way for me to break out of this pattern, this unconscious, sometimes subconscious pattern of feeling that there's something missing or there's something wrong in me, and therefore I don't have what others have that I wish I had. And I realized it had just become this thing that got glossed over everything, really. And so I started really focusing on gratitude, what I was grateful for, counting my blessings, seeing, instead of, for me, I'd focus narrowly on what was wrong or missing, rather than looking at the bigger picture of my life, which that's not true at all. There's so much richness in my life. I've got so much to be grateful for. And the Enneagram really helped me to see very specifically that was my rut. That was my blind spot.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
How about you, blind spots? Have you noticed for you when you discovered you're a 3 and how that showed up in your world?
Yes. So part of the contribution, I think, to my being a 3, the 3 is the performer, and the achiever will be deceptive of our emotions and our true feelings, and try to often hide them from people, not because we are trying to be rude or trying to pull one over on people, but mostly because we want to project the best impression. Threes are all about projecting the best impression we possibly can, looking good, believing that we are what we achieve, versus that our achievements are just things in the world of form, and that we are more than what we've achieved. And so part of what formed me as a three was a distinct experience with my father, who was a control freak, rageaholic man who was just not comfortable with strong emotion, good or bad. I mean, he would suddenly want to control our laughter, my siblings and myself, if we were happy and giddy, and it was disturbing him. Not only the negative, and where there was no crying, and there was no anger, and there was no negative emotion, that he wanted to be allowed in our space. And so I took that very seriously and really became quiet about who I am emotionally. And that's part of what contributed to my being a three. As an adult, as I grew older, and of course wanted to sometimes express strong emotions or had strong emotions, I would literally find myself, I'm sorry if you can hear my dogs barking, I would literally find myself frozen in my ability to speak through emotion. And if I was in a relationship, work-wise or friendship or romantic relationship, I was not very honest about how I was really feeling. I would make stuff up. I would pretend I wasn't upset when I was, because I wanted to be the perfect companion to everyone, and I did not want to create waves, and I didn't want to cause problems, and I didn't want to upset you, and I didn't want to look bad either. I just couldn't do that. And it took a lot of work, as you mentioned, through our growing up in this teaching, I would say, and the work we do as a practitioner and training for ministers, the deep personal work, therapy, and this work in the Enneagram, to help me really see that I was being deceptive to myself and others. And it really invited me to begin to take risks in my relationships and see that it was safe to be my authentic self. And it was specifically, I would say, serving in my beautiful community in Arizona, that was New Vision Center, where the vision for that was absolute authenticity. And so as a leader in that organization, because I could express that in that community, I learned to be my more authentic self.
Beautiful. Well, as you were sharing how you developed this threeliness as a child, I was thinking, well, how did that come around for me in my family of origin? Because I think with the Enneagram, that's where this personality, one of these 9 personality points develop, is in our in our childhood.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the fact that our Enneagram is based on 2 things. Firstly, our soul essence, that innate part of us, and then it's also contributes to our leading type is this conditioning or personality that's created when we're young, based on us as little ones trying to be seen and heard and feel safe and get the love that we need and be able to love those around us. We develop a personality.
Right.
And I can hear very clearly how your personality developed based on, it sounds like, mostly your dad's influence. And so as I'm thinking back to my childhood and how my parents and my environment influenced me, I was alone a lot. I was an only child. My parents had me very quickly. They met on a blind date, 6 weeks later got married, and they were both athletes, and they were both very competitive athletes that were engaged internationally. And so that left me alone a lot. I had nannies, a series of nannies. And so I think I always hungered to be seen by my parents, to understand who I was in the shadow of their big personalities.
Sure.
And so I was always questioning, well, who am I and how do I fit? And if they're so special, because they were both sort of in the limelight. My dad was a rower and my mother was track and field, and both Olympic athletes. And so, you know, I felt probably just by association that I was famous too. You know, I felt like, oh, I'm part of this dynamic family, but yet I didn't really know who I was as someone special other than by association. So I think with the fours, we're always seeking to be special and unique and find our true identity. And that's often a quest, or things that you'll hear fours talk about, their need to be seen and appreciated for their unique, special, you know, who they are. And for me, I definitely developed that from that early childhood of not being seen. You know, it kind of exacerbated that need, I think. And so when I found that later on in life, and this is one of those sort of blind spots, that if I was in a situation, whether I was working with a team or working in my own spiritual center, the Satya Center, if I wasn't seen or acknowledged, now there's another component to this, which is, and I'd love to talk about this in a later show, which is the subtypes.
Right.
So, you know, just for those
layers.
Yeah, there are layers. And so I'm a self-preservation. So I'm not your typical four. I'm kind of the more put on a happy face type of four, and kind of keep all this turmoil down beneath the surface. This need to be recognized and be seen. And if I was in a sort of an unhealthy place, or if I wasn't on my game and I wasn't recognized or acknowledged, and I can really turn inwards and get a bit moody and kind of isolate. And so you know, these were things I was seeing in myself that I wasn't so happy with. I think that's, you know, one of those things that people do discover, along with a great treasure trove of things to support us on our spiritual path. So I don't want to, you know, just say, oh, we only shine the light of awareness on those negatives. There's so many positive things to take away from the learning about your Enneagram type, and then using what we learn on a spiritual path forward. But we're going to take a really short break, and we'll come back and talk more with Michelle about the Enneagram. See you in a minute.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth, to live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
We're back.
Yay.
Yay. So, Michelle and I have had some conversations about topics we might want to talk about moving forward and make this Enneagram chat a more regular thing. But this episode is about us. And I was thinking, you and I are both trained in the narrative tradition of the Enneagram. And the narrative tradition puts a great emphasis on not telling people what their types are, but allowing people or encouraging people to find their leading type or their leading number through listening to people talk about their type. And so the narrative tradition often you can find on YouTube and lots of different websites, interviews, panels, and such, where you might get a whole group of type 3s or a whole group of type 4s or any number talk about that and what it means and what it feels like to be that particular, lead with that particular type. And so that's why having conversations like this, I think, is very important. It's not only helpful for others to hear us, you as a leading with a 3 and me leading with a 4, to maybe help them rule those two numbers out, or maybe think, oh, I can relate with that. And so in us sharing like this, it is not only helpful for others, but it's helpful for us too, as we sort of explore particular questions, ideas, and then share how we both would talk about that, or and that can give greater depth to what it really means to understand your Enneagram type.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple of ideas here. First of all, there's something called the centers, the head center, the heart center, and the body center within the Enneagram. And it just so happens that Michelle, leading with a 3 and a 4, we are in the heart center triad. And so the heart center triad, these individuals are the emotional ones. They primarily see through the lens of relationships and maintaining connections with people. They're concerned with their self-image and what other people think, and maintaining and keeping those connections intact. And so, Michelle, you talked a little bit about when you learned your leading type, how that really impacted you in that workshop with your mother, that was talking about relationships. So I'd love to talk a little bit, explore a little bit about that. How has you learning about your type, being in that emotional center, the heart center, how has that helped you with your relationships and maintaining them and nurturing them?
I used to have a friend years ago, and she had a theory about life. And that theory was, what if the place you struggle the most is actually your greatest genius? And that used to really cause me lots of thought. And when I discovered what type I led with and how much energy is spent in my typology attempting to push down everything that's related to my heart and just do more so that I can get love, it was a huge, huge awareness to say to myself, as my friend suggested, what if my heart center and expressing from my heart, and what if my emotional body, as Eckhart Tolle talks about it, is my greatest gift or my greatest strength? So I've always had a strong desire for connection to people. My subtype is the social one. So we moved a lot when I was a kid, and I made friends like that. If you ask me now, what is probably one of the realms of life that's easiest for me, I always have lots of friends. I always have lots of people to go places with and do things with and text and talk to. It can be overwhelming because sometimes I have too many connections, but connecting with other people has always been something that's important to me. And now that I've discovered the Enneagram and discovered that propensity to push down my heart energy, discovering that I'm a heart type has caused me to want now not just to connect with people at the surface level, but I really value heart connections. I really value and can be very present with people who are sharing their heart and being vulnerable. I have learned in my relationships to share my heart and my feelings, and have discovered that it's quite a dissonance when I'm trying to hide what I'm feeling and challenge myself when I'm trying to hide my feelings, to really own my feelings and figure out what I need to do with them. And so I'm not perfect, and I'm not it's not always easy, but it's getting to be an easier journey to be with my emotions. And I would say now I finding out that I'm a heart type has literally given me permission to be a crier, a joy crier, to be a sad crier, to not feel I need to be comforted when I'm crying. I don't even want Kleenex when I'm crying. The way I feel about it is that I hid my tears for so many years in my life that when I'm crying, I love feeling the wet of the sting of the tears on my face and the snot coming out of my nose. I don't want a gosh darn Kleenex. If I want a Kleenex, I'll ask for one because I'm proud. I'm a proud crier now. And so that's part of my heart center, that it like bursts open so much more easily now that I know it. And I'm happy to be a heart-centered person. That it goes along with my values. It goes along with what I think is important as a human being. Not that the other centers aren't as important. It's just for me, finding and being a heart-centered person is vital.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for that.
That's wonderful. Well, I won't be offering you a tissue if I
You see me crying. Oh, there she goes. Oh, look at her.
There she goes, enjoying the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you're talking about it, I'm wondering for myself, being heart-centered, and then also taking into consideration my subtype, which is such a big part of, I think for a 4, we're known, when we lead with a type 4, we're known for being emotional.
Yes.
And having the self-preservation part active in me, I've always kept that on the down low. So I'm maybe more like a 3 in that.
Yes.
So I can appear very stoic. I can not look like I'm emotionally impacted a lot of times. And I think that can be good and bad. I do find that being a heart-centered type, being a 4, I yearn to have deep, meaningful relationships with people. And for me, 4s are more introverted than 3s. And so it's more of I don't need a big group of friends. I am more comfortable with one-on-one. And my sister, who is a social 3, like you, I can really relate. There's a big contrast between the way she moves, way you move in the world, as far as, lots of friends, it's almost like lots of plates spinning. I see her always tending to all these different friendships and relationships, and it's really quite amazing because I can only, handle 2 maybe. Two really close friends. And so that's how my depth and my heart show up in my world, is through a best friend or, very close circle of friends. Or I've seen it in my counseling and in my coaching. I'm very good at meeting people where they are. I
Yeah.
have a very discerning ear when it comes to people sharing their emotions. I'm able to, I find myself very intuitive. I can often pick up on certain things and then ask particular questions that take people deeper. And
Wonderful.
so I think even though the twos, the threes, and the fours are in that heart center triad, we have different ways of really digging into emotions and feelings and connections in different ways. The twos, for example, and my husband's a two, and they primarily gain that seek love and connection through being helpful.
Yeah.
And he's really that way. I mean, goodness, I even before the Enneagram, thank goodness, I identified that he really prioritizes being helpful. And so, like you were saying earlier, when we don't know that someone's deep core motivation, we can see what they're doing as maybe annoying or aggravating
Right.
personally. And
Mhm.
I would watch him like go taking all the time in the world. I remember one Thanksgiving, he actually left midway through the meal with a plate of food to drive an hour away to one of his customers' house to give him a plate of food. And I was annoyed
I
because
bet.
he's supposed to be enjoying his family, but no, he wanted to run off to be helpful. And so it's taken me a lot of years to really come to terms with it and appreciate
Mhm.
that in him and really support him in that. And it all weighs out in the end. He's very helpful with his family and at home as well.
Yeah.
But it does. So the three different types within the heart center really go about maintaining that connection, deepening their relationships with others in different ways. And even though we sort of, are placing these in boxes, it's not. We can all learn from the two's helpfulness or the three's identity with achieving and being successful and making the work they do as a way of connecting with others, and
Mhm.
the fours of being unique and different and creating deeper intimate relationships, maybe more one-on-one. So there's things that we can learn, I think, just hearing this conversation, understanding that for us, that lens of relationship is probably more keen or key in our experience than maybe people that are head types
Mhm.
or body types, which I think would be fun to talk about.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. We should do a whole conversation about the three different types, the three centers.
Yeah.
Sure. Mhm.
Yeah. So we have mentioned that we're both ministers, that we've both served as leaders in communities, and you're currently doing that. My ministry is more online and personal one-on-one coaching. So, how have you blended or seen the new thought, philosophies, teachings blend with what you've learned as the Enneagram?
Well, I think I'm still working to articulate that. Where I am so far is that I believe that at the core, most humans are seeking an understanding of ourselves, self knowledge, a deeper awareness of who we are in the world and in the universe. And we've primarily used faith traditions, religion, spiritual experiences to do that, which you and I have been part of for years. And so in our faith tradition, a lot of our work is about realigning your sense of self as an expression of the divine. Um, and finding yourself and your relationship with the divine to empower yourself. And so, what I've discovered, and so far where I am with it, is that in the Enneagram, every type has an essential quality that is the true nature of that type. And I see that the closer I can get to that more often, that that quality in each type is like a doorway into the kingdom of heaven, a doorway into the divine, a doorway into true power, personal power and expression, a doorway into my deepest guidance. And so I think just like in the spiritual journey, we're doing our best to try to set aside all this distraction in the world of form that keeps grabbing hold of us and making us think we're not these unique, magnificent beings. The Enneagram is one tool that can allow us to set aside the distractions of our personality, the way the personality wants to yap at us and tell us who we are and motivates us to do and be things that are not in alignment with that essential quality within us. And knowing that, knowing all of this about ourselves is the first step. And as you mentioned, we don't tell people who they are. We help people unfold that awareness for themselves, which is the most powerful way, I think, to learn and discover anything. And then once that awareness happens, we can really begin to do the work to let go of that personality distraction and get to that essential nature. And that's very empowering. So that's where I am so far with it. And I'm hoping that to continue to evolve it, because I do see that it doesn't feel logical. My heart, my soul just feels like there is a connection to this, and that's the first one that I've discovered.
Yeah. I'm going through the training to become a science of mind or religious science practitioner. We're really on a, like you said, a path to awakening, understanding who we really are as unique, individualized expressions of the divine. And I see, as I look over my journey, I see that studying science of mind, and which opened up so many different doorways to so many other teachings, from around the world, spiritual paths, it gave me such a good foundation to understanding that there's this spiritual essence that I am. And so when I came to the Enneagram, and then it outlined these, personalities, these things that we sort of, the more shadow sides of those personalities that we can develop into and become more attached to. And like you said, the personality can strangle the essence, or the personality can overshadow that essential self that I spent 30 years developing and discovering and practicing all the things that I do, like meditation, journaling, all the things that I've done to sort of bring that inner light, that essential self out. Then the Enneagram came into my world, and I was able to see, okay, there's different words here, but they're very, they fall very nicely together with what we learn in New Thought. And I thought it would be interesting to share the words, the virtues, they're called in the Enneagram. In Science of Mind, we talk about the qualities of the divine, the qualities of God that we're seeking to embody more often and more frequently. And so there's type 1 or point 1 on the Enneagram, which is known as the reformer. And the word associated with them is serenity. And I think that is a pathway to discover within ourselves. We could just take that word serenity and dive into that as a pathway to our soul.
And I think we should tell people who are listening that there are different articulations of these words, so you might find them a little bit different here and there. But go ahead with your.
Yeah, so number 1 is sometimes known as the perfectionist,
right,
or the improver, or the reformer. So yeah, it can be a little bit confusing as you're if you're online studying or looking for this, but we'll call it type 1. So serenity is their path to greater peace. And then for type 2s, who are known as the helpers, it's humility. It's learning humility that is a path to really embodying their essence. For the threes, and Michelle leads with a 3, it's the achiever or the performer, and the word is truthfulness.
Right.
And type 4s, the individualists or the artists, their word is equanimity. And I love that. I cultivate equanimity and emotional balance. I accept life with grace and composure. Type 5 is known as the investigator, and their gift or their pathway is non-attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Type 6, they're known as the loyalist, and their pathway or their word is courage. And type 7, they're known as the enthusiast, and their word, and this one's a little interesting, is sobriety.
Right.
And that's not just sobriety in terms of like AA or something like that. It's a more feeling of being satisfied with life as it is, because the 7s are known to really have a big hunger for life and always seeking more fun and more adventure and more.
Right.
So sobriety is a very centering, grounding word for all of us, really, but for 7s especially. The type 8s are known as the challengers or the controllers, sometimes they're known as, and their word is innocence.
Mm-hmm.
And some people also use the word vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
as a way to come to their essence or to really embody their essence. And then 9s, the last ones, they're known as the peacemakers,
Mm-hmm.
and their word is, or their quality is, right action.
Mm-hmm.
Right action is their pathway to their soul.
Very good. You did that really well, Allie.
Did I do that well?
Yay.
And that's kind of an awesome segue into introducing Michelle's new website, because I know that you're, as we mentioned, we just graduated, and now we're bringing all of this to our world and to our lives. And you've developed a business around these 9 paths to the soul, and that's the name of your website, right?
It is. Yes.
You want to talk about that, what that looks like, and how you're going to support others?
Yes, 9 Paths to the Soul. You can go to our website and take a look at it. Oh, good. They've got that up on the screen. We're still working on getting a scheduling tool in there. But one of the things that we can do with people, both Allie and myself, is that in the narrative tradition, because as she mentioned, we don't tell you what type you lead with, but we help you discover it through an interview process called a typing. And so I have a typing interview where you can just meet with me, and I'll ask you some questions. I'll give you a book, and I'll suggest some types, and you can go off and explore and discover what type you are and experiment with it a little bit. Or if you want to go a little deeper, I also am offering a package deal of 3 sessions where I'll work with people to really help them to get clear about where they lead in the Enneagram, and then if they are interested, begin to go deeper. And then both Allie and I can do coaching for people. Once they know their type, we can help people to see their life through their typology and through the center that they live in through that typology, and make better choices in relationships and in work and in living our life and in being happier and content and knowing ourselves more. And so that's part of what we do. Plus, I know that we're both speaking and teaching in places where we're invited, seminars, workshops, and looking to do podcasts and all sorts of things. So the Enneagram is really popular right now. So if you go into Google and search for it, you'll find all sorts of offerings. And we are not big recommenders of those online tests. We think that through the narrative tradition, these conversations of hearing yourself when you're asked a question about yourself and hearing how you answer helps you, as well as those of us who are helping you, to help you kind of figure out where you might be. And sometimes we have a little bit of because of those blind spots, different perception of ourselves. But this objective view here where I sit, as I ask you a question, you say, oh, I never do that. But then 2 questions later, you're telling me how you just did what you never said you did. Well, that might be helpful for us to find your typology for you. So your matrix, as we call it. So it's exciting to do this work and help people this way. So
yeah, it definitely is. It's I visited your website. It looks awesome.
thank you.
And mine's up and coming,
Yay.
AliceJBenjamin.com. But stay tuned because it's a work in progress. So as we wrap this up, Michelle, is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners today in regards to why knowing what type they lead with might support them? What are some of the benefits for the newcomer to this? And we're on the New Thought Media Network. So I'm imagining that the people that are listening have probably done a fair amount of their own work, their own self-development. So how would them knowing, understanding their leading Enneagram point or type support them?
Well, let's talk for a minute about that word we use called blind spots. In New Thought, we are taught that we are co-creators of our reality. We use the law of attraction, so therefore we use affirmations, and we use prayer as a creative process to help us to create the lives we want. And I fully believe in all that. However, many times people will pray in a certain direction or affirm something over and over, and there's no movement, there's nothing happening. And sometimes I think that's because that blind spot is so deeply entrenched. And you called it, and I think it's true, it might be equivalent to the shadow, the deep subconscious beliefs we have about ourselves, the unconscious beliefs we have about ourselves, the limitations we're not even aware that we're operating from. And so all the while I'm affirming this that's way up high, but deep down in my consciousness, I'm really believing and behaving here. And so I think that for most of us, learning about our blind spots and learning about ourselves and how we really operate is a way to dislodge some of that deeper belief system and bring it into the light, and at the very least get out of denial about it and see it. And that makes us happier, more content, more able to deal with our own self. But if you are of a New Thought tradition and wanting to create the life you really want to have, this work helps you to be able to see more clearly what might be in the way of you creating in the direction you want to create.
Awesome. Well, we are right at the end of the show. That was perfect to end with. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being my guest today. I look forward to many more Enneagram chats. Thank you to the New Thought Media Network, and thank you to you, my guests. I love you. If you want support, outreach to us, we're here for you, and we'll see you next week. Mwah. Bye-bye.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth, to live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge.